everyone can see and hear you. Oh, the stream
All
is
right, we are live. Hello, ladies and gents. Hello, Ruby. How are you?
Yeah, resisting as best I can.
Okay. All right. That's all we can do. The best we can, right? So.
Yes. Yeah. How about you?
Just wanted to say, I'm good. I'm back home now, so which is good. I should have better internet connection and less issues. Currently we have. I don't think there is anybody watching it live right now, but we are live, and hopefully people will maybe join later or watch it later. That's fine.
Tell us a little bit about your vacation.
We went to Kaikoura Coast, which is the east coast of the South Island of New Zealand. If you look at the actual island at the map, it's in the middle. It's a marine reserve and a marine national park. It's quite a special area because the way the coastal shelf works there is that there is a very steep drop off into a deep canyon, many miles deep. That's where all the marine life comes to breed, feed, play, everything. So we stayed there for a few days. We swam with hundreds of dolphins, at least 3 different kinds of dolphins. So we just literally just go out. They are everywhere, playing in the surf, chasing your boat. So you just dive in and swim with them, and they literally come up to you. And I exaggerate not hundreds of them, like as far as your eye can see. So it's then we saw a sperm whale, a whole bunch of seals. Last time we saw a humpback. This time we just missed on the blue whale. The blue whale was passing by, and it's all within like a couple of miles offshore. So you literally just drive. We have our own little boat, so we drive around. Do what we want. We do a bit of surfing behind the boat, a bit of wakeboarding, jump and swim with the marine life. Yeah, a lot of people go fish there, so it's quite a unique experience, really. And we go there every year.
Yeah, is this a seasonal thing then with all the wildlife? Do they come to feed, or do they come? I mean, you mentioned all the things they do, but is this like the peak time of year for that location for wildlife activity or sea life?
In summer, dolphins come closer to the shore. That's because that's where they raise their young. So we saw some tiny,
oh my god,
little baby dolphins. That was so cool. Like surrounded by their families, they like literally the size of a small dog. Yeah.
Oh my god!
So cool. When they jump
I've never thought of a baby
they play,
dolphin.
they show off. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's you see so many cool things. Yeah, they do all sorts of flips and tricks, like double backflips. They jump out 5-6 meters, which is about 15, 16 feet into the air, and they jump back down. So they just play, they have fun, they raise their young, and then that's in summer. And seals are there all the time. There are seals everywhere. There are like hundreds of seals on the rocks, in the water. They just like, seals are like sea puppies, pretty much. They,
I've heard that. Called.
Yeah, they're very, very curious, very inquisitive. And then in summer, that's what happens. In winter, it changes. So the whales come closer to the shore. So humpbacks come closer with their young. And you have orca. There is a lot of orca whales. They are technically a dolphin.
Are they really?
Yeah, they are dolphin family. Yeah, they are resident orcas there, so they hunt stingrays there. The main diet there is stingray. So there are different kinds of orcas around the world. Some of them hunt dolphins, baby whales, seals, and these ones in particular.
Okay, we can go away from what the orcas eat. I was cool with the baby dolphins flipping, but maybe not hearing about how they're also
orcas are there all the time. Orcas are just cruising through, so you see them. Doesn't matter whether it's winter or summer. So in winter, dolphins go a bit further away from the shore, and whales come in closer. So yeah.
Well, that really.
One of the things that I always wanted to do is, I didn't get a chance to swim with orcas just yet, but hopefully next time we see them, we'll jump in, and they are fascinating animals. I want from my very very young years, I wanted to become a marine scientist. So I was always fascinated with marine life, but just it was very hard to find any seas or oceans where I was from. So that had to be put on hold, and then it never really turned out that way. So yeah,
I can absolutely see why you return every year, of course, and why that would be for someone as active as you such a fascinating place to live. I do know someone who used to train dolphins. Very similar, had a dream as a kid to work with marine life. And I don't know if you saw the video, the viral video the last couple of days where that poor kayaker got temporarily swallowed and then spit back out. So just, orcas are different. I don't remember which whale it was. Orcas are different. So if you're going to
humpback, it was a humpback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, shoot, I completely forgot where I was going because I thought, well, maybe Ivan will just punch it on the nose if it tries to eat him.
If orca. Yeah.
Oh, I know what it is. You have a delay. So periodically while we're streaming, there will be a buffer. We don't lose the content of what you're saying. It's just a momentary lag. So I don't know what's contributing to it, but so long as I wait for you to finish your sentence, we stay, smooth as far as communicating the ideas.
Okay, no, that's interesting.
And we won't know
sure why
you upload it if it's just, again, something I'm receiving on my end. That is fine on yours. So, but it's not disruptive other than occasional pauses, and you're not losing words. Fortunately, this time it's just a slight delay of a couple seconds sometimes.
Okay.
So moving on.
Well,
with see dramatic pauses. That's what we'll call it. Dramatic pause.
Yeah. Well, look, we're still ironing things out, so we'll get to it. Did you watch the game today?
No, I did not. I'll watch it later. I watched the preceding game, but do you know what Galentine's is, Ivan? Like Valentine's, but with a G.
Galentine's.
Yes.
No.
So it's a relatively modern concept. And technically, Galentine's Day, I believe, is February 13th. And it's a celebration of sisterhood, the feminine, friendship. So love other than the romantic hetero love that's usually celebrated on Valentine's Day. Now, in the past, I've had groups of girlfriends that get together, and sometimes we do it on Valentine's Day as an alternative. So if you don't have a partner or you just want to be around someone, then you can have a Galentine's Day. Or you can go to one of the anti-Valentine's Day parties at bars and stuff like that. There are all kinds of options out there if you don't have a partner and aren't looking for a romantic dinner. But a friend of mine and I went out and saw a show last night, and it was a great Galentine's. Just kind of celebrated each other and had some good, the best burger I've had in a long time. So it was a little late for this old lady by the time I got back, and 6:30 a.m. was not happening for me. But I knew you had seen the other match, and I have some of my notes from the preceding match, and I'll eventually catch up on today's when they post it in the replay. What about you? Did you watch it?
I watched those 10 minutes.
Oh, good for you.
That I promised to.
Good for you. Did you get the 10 minutes of the one before, though, right?
Yeah, the one before.
Okay, yeah. That one I can converse about.
Yeah. But today's game I watched I kind of watched a minute every 10 minutes. Like I just watched the goals. I just watched a couple of slots and episodes from first half, second half. Just so I got an idea of what happened. I mean,
well, we can talk about that after the one before if you want, or
Yeah,
is it
yeah,
cool
no,
you'll still
we
have
can.
impressions about it, or next time, or whatever?
Yeah, I guess before we get started, I just wanted to quickly address the little word that I used last episode that
Okay.
starts with R and ends with itarded. I did not mean to use it in any derogative way. It's my. I guess it's. I sympathize and support people with any kind of challenges and all
Right.
kind of challenges, and
Mhm.
only love for those who
Sure.
battle things that they are not in control of, or they were not
Yes.
they were not asked to receive that challenge. So
Hmm.
please don't get it wrong. I only that's to me it's only word that I used
Of course.
in relation to myself,
Of
and I
course.
did not mean any harm to anybody.
Of course.
So
And I think that
yeah,
our viewers would appreciate, I know that I do, as someone who has previously used the word, as I shared with you, well into my adulthood. And when we learn, especially from the perspective, mine was being friends with someone who worked in the industry of supporting people who have disabilities. And there are a lot of different words that become just commonplace and habit, especially if there's something that's used in Hollywood or things like that and perpetuated. But I certainly think that we appreciate, we're all going to make mistakes. As we iterated in the last episode, we're here to learn, and we're here to be a respectful and inclusive space. And especially as I think English not being your first language, that's, not saying it, but we both study languages. And sometimes when we're thinking of the next idea, a word drops out that we're comfortable with, we don't even notice. So it's entirely likely that I will at some point say something I would prefer not to, just because my brain's going forward out of habit. And I'm absolutely willing to be accountable to that, as we talked about here, for not just authenticity, but accountability for actions, not only in football, but in life, being a reflection of character. And part of us coming together is not just growing as football supporters, but growing as people. And so I appreciate that. I, in advance, acknowledge that I myself may have slip ups, and not all of us are aware that certain words have significance. I've still learned about some, but we're willing to grow. And so, moving on from that, let's talk about how you did me dirty in the thumbnail from the YouTube. I don't know how you figure out how the frozen picture for the video is you looking all macho. Let me get your hat here. You got your hat, you're in the sunshine, you got your muscles, and you're all cool, right? And I look like I'm having a sneeze that's going to make my brain shoot out of my mouth. Like this is how you do. And that is the opening view for whoever chose to click on it. So as we learn more technology, let's be gentle to our friend who is a woman of a certain age, and maybe pick a more flattering frame.
Jesse, I I did not choose anything. It happens automatically. I
I
promise
knew you
you.
were going to blame
It's
YouTube. I
like
knew it.
I was no the YouTube, from what I know, out of the entire stream, it chooses the most dynamic frame.
Oh,
So when there is
God.
so, you know what I mean. So, and even this time around, when you're making your like funny
Looking
faces,
at it
laughing,
again.
waving your arms around,
Yes.
the system is going to
Well, it has lots of choices
choose
then
that
with
automatically.
me.
So
So
the good thing is that
God knows
we can
what it'll be
filter it.
next time.
Yeah.
All right. But when we get
Yeah.
better, I bet there's a way that we can choose it once we know how. So we'll make that a goal for the future of, finding
Yes.
the less abstract art, Picasso version of myself to be.
Well,
It wouldn't
look.
have been so bad if you didn't look so cool. You were like, I mean, just a pillar of masculinity in the dappled sun with your little hat and your tiny t-shirt. You know, that speaking of tiny t-shirts, I have another because
Yes.
after last week's prototype,
Okay.
I decided that we needed one that includes tattoos. So we saw a few of yours. I'm going to work more on inclusive language. So for those who can't see, I'm holding up a triple extra large Ivan size, which is probably good for a 12-month-old. And it comes with attached kind of pantyhose material that are airbrushed with faux tattoos. So we've got stuff here with flames. It says choppers. The t-shirt itself is gray. But yeah, it should provide the ideal Ivan fit for your wardrobe needs, and soon to be available with our future merch and swag. I should start naming these, but this is a prototype number 2.
Uh-huh.
You're welcome.
I love that. I love that one. With the anything to do with those tattoos, I love. But I'm pretty sure it's just a double XL, not triple XL. So
okay, well, I mean, but you can order it in triple XL because it can come with muscles included. So for a slight upcharge,
true.
We can have the muscles inserted into the tee for your Ivan replication. And we'll just have to kind of figure out the exchange rate on that. But yeah, okay, so triple extra large with muscles included, double X if you're going natural.
Excellent. I love that. Keep them coming. Just like I said, we will have a whole lineup of all sorts of different outfits. So yeah, stand by for that. Look, what I wanted to sort of slowly segue into is the question that I think Deandra asked us.
Okay.
So because I actually really like that question. She asked about what club Wrexham should emulate in their progress and development and going up through the leagues, and she referred that there is one.
That's a great question.
There is one, there is one out there that people always mention is Luton, but nowadays they
I have
are
heard of
on
that one a few times.
Yeah, then nowadays they are on a decline. So they had quite a quick journey from lower leagues to the EPL, and then now they got relegated. Championship. So back to League One. So the classic elevator team, up and then straight down.
That's whom some people might be concerned that we will emulate. If we go up to the championship, maybe like this season, and then perhaps risk bouncing back down if we're not able to make some changes.
Yeah. Also, a lot of people say that we should emulate their model of going up, but try to stay away from the from the downfall, from the downside. To answer that question, I think it's very hard to name a club or even a couple of clubs that we really need to copy. But AFC Bournemouth is probably the one that I would, because I did a little bit of research on that long time ago while I was coaching, studying, and they also faced very harsh financial difficulties back in the beginning of the 2000s. And then steadily but sustainably, they rose through from lower leagues all the way into Premier League. That's where they are now.
Wow.
And the only I say downside to everything that happened to them is that the money actually came from Russia back in the day, which I don't particularly. But it wasn't an oligarch; it was a businessman that invested relatively modestly, But yeah,
Okay.
all big money from Russia comes from criminal sources, so there is just no denying that. That's why I would like to make that little mark and put a star next to it. That's the thing that I do not support. But what I do support is the way they did it, the style of football that they played, which was under I forgot the name of their manager right now. But what they did is that they focused on a attacking, high press, possessional style of football with a very strong technical and strategic and tactical acumen. So they never bought any, say, expensive players, but they developed players from lower league into all the way into Premier League quite a bit. I think the entire defense lineup, like 4 or 5 players of the defensive jobs were developed from like League Two, League One, all the way into Premier League. A couple of wingers, a striker, and they even kept on developing them through different managers. So when managers would step down, they would not just drop those players off. They developed players through the leagues, and those players were not necessarily the best when it comes to technical and physical abilities, but they were quite strong in their tactical education, and they played really well together as a team. They
That
spend
sounds
smartly. They
time
developed the youth
consuming,
system. They made sure the
Ivan.
infrastructure is up to scratch.
That sounds like
Yes,
something that would take a long
yes.
time.
Surprisingly, yes, it is time consuming, but everything in comparison. So not that time consuming. Only a few years, only like 3 or 4 years.
Really?
Um, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is, what they have done. Again, I don't remember all of the details, but they created such a system of playing that they could easily insert players in case of injuries. They were rotating the squad regularly, so not just replacing injured players, but they relied on a systematic approach, not just when they got to a certain stage, but all the way through. So when they
And
were
so they were
promoted from a
relying
league,
on their own players. So they weren't getting loans and stuff to fill these holes as they manifested. They were pulling from their own pool.
well, they developed their own players from the youth system. They bought, but they bought smartly. They did not buy
Okay.
superstars and super expensive players, and they utilized the loan system. So
Oh,
they
okay.
did get players on loan from higher leagues, and that saved them a lot of money, but brought a lot of benefits along the way.
Okay.
Because basically, with high caliber loan young players, not only you get a player itself, but you also get a quite often you get a model effectively of what the young players of your team can look at and say, okay, this guy went through Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal school. This is what they teach. You can see it. He's a visual representation of a tertiary education of the highest level in football. Let's put it this way.
Okay.
And that's an opportunity for youngsters from smaller clubs to look at the player and learn from them.
Okay. Well, to me, from what you're sharing, an investment of 3 or 4 years at, was it one stage? Were they in one division of football for this restructuring, or did they continue to ascend during these 3 or 4
They
years?
they continue to ascend. I don't remember exactly how many years they spent until League Two is spent in League Two, League One, Championship, but it wasn't like 5 years at a time. It was like a year or two.
Wow.
So it was very realistic. Still fast. I mean, right now Wrexham is aiming for three-peat back-to-back record
Yeah.
breaking. They were not about that. They were not about that. They were about, and that's why they are still in Premier League, and that's why they're playing a um, very wholesome brand of football. Even
Okay.
though they changed a few managers and some things went wrong, but they had a base. They had a base. They had a system that could be passed on, that could be developed, changed, molded according to the, and that system never really fell apart. it was always tweaked and adjusted, but it stayed in place. And that's why even now, I'm not sure if we check the standings, you can bring it up on your screen if you want, of the Premier League currently. I don't think they are in danger of relegation currently. I think they're actually doing quite well for a relatively small club. So I will actually probably check the table right now.
Okay.
Now, so that they're number 5. They're in 5th place, behind Liverpool, Arsenal, Nottingham Forest, and Man City. Very solid. So they are in European Cups areas. So
what
that would be the club that.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that would be the club that I would emulate or try to learn the best from if I was in charge of a football club. Yeah.
Okay. Well, when you compare the ascendancy of that club, what are some of the similarities and differences you see for Wrexham in comparison to that? So we have an idea now about Bournemouth's ascension and the formula that worked for them. What are some things that you see Wrexham possessing as traits as a club that would benefit them? And what are a few of the things you see that could be hindrances that Bournemouth didn't have? I'm going to assume from the beginning the Hollywood factor isn't there for Bournemouth, but take your time and think about a couple of things in that comparison.
I think if we talk about the positives, and something that Wrexham has is ambitious owners, strong financial backing, and from my understanding, it will become stronger and stronger. The loyal group of supporters, history, which is almost the case with any British football club, to be honest. So we can't really, take it as a unique advantage. It's just there, which is great. So those are the pros, and that's unfortunately the end of the pros, because the route that Wrexham the route that Wrexham chose on to ascend right now is completely opposite to what Bournemouth did. They more following. Well, again, you can't compare it 1-to-1, but they more going along the lines of Luton. So up, and then who knows what's going to happen.
Right.
To give you and our viewers a comparison, there was that guy named Hitler, and he one day decided to invade the Soviet Union. I'm just giving that. It's a historical comparison, because sports is effectively. I think there is that old famous saying: "Sports is a war in the time of peace."
Yes.
Okay.
So you're going to illustrate an example for us.
Your military layout and
maneuvers that are relevant.
Yeah. Okay. Of maneuvers, of tactical and strategical decisions that lead to certain consequences.
Okay.
So when Hitler invaded Soviet Union, one of his ideas and one of his goals were to get to Volgograd, which is back then was known as Stalingrad. It's a river Volga. It's quite a ways away from the border of Polish and USSR border back then. And he drove large masses and large concentrations of forces and units of various nature through the Russian territory all the way to River Volga, to Stalingrad. There were a number of reasons behind that. He wanted to seize the town that was named, the city that was named after the leader of the Soviet Union. He wanted to disrupt oil supply and logistical supplies to the Russian forces. And he wanted to capture and control as much territory as possible in a record-breaking time. As he was progressing through the territory,
So his purposes then were psychological, by taking the named city. There was logistics in weakening the opposition, by preventing their
Mhm.
access to sustain themselves as well. And then
Mhm.
there was expansion as part of the plan. Now, as concepts, maybe as we continue with the story, I'd just like to point out these three concepts might manifest
Perfect.
against. So, all
Yeah.
right, he's there with a bunch of people.
Yep, he's there through years 90, yeah, through years 1941, 1942, and pretty much very close to 1943. He was pushing through. He was fighting a war of attrition, even though Germany was fighting a maneuver warfare. They were very direct with their concentrated tank unit attacks. They would then surround a certain territory with the units of the enemy that were unlucky enough to end up in that pot, and that's how they were advancing through. At the same time, there were other, yeah.
So I just want to clarify a couple things because I'm not familiar with them
Mhm.
and some listeners might not be either. First of all, I think you were saying maneuver
Mhm.
movement. Okay, because the V disappeared in the feed and it sounded like you said manure.
Manure. I
I was like,
hate
oh, is that
manure.
French? Is that French? Or is he saying their shit? Okay. Secondly, what is attrition? What is attrition and attrition warfare? What does that mean?
Attrition warfare is a warfare designed, sorry, not designed, but it's a warfare of a type when sides take high amount of casualties, and it becomes a race of who can sustain more casualties.
Okay, because I've heard of attrition football, but this seems like another great, perhaps, link between the sport
Yep.
and actual combat. Okay, so attrition warfare, we've got two different styles, but
Absorb.
the maneuver style.
Yep.
So, but thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying
So,
that. Please go ahead.
yep. No worries. So, as on his race to the final goal, some of the people and high-ranking officers uh, who were in charge of certain elements of the forces, they were concerned about that kind of rate of movement and the overall end state that they were trying to achieve. And they voiced those concerns, saying that, look, you are stretching the logistical shoulders too far. You are moving too fast. This is not sustainable. You cannot keep on bringing fresh units from African and Pacific theater to replace the units that were heavily damaged and attrited on the Eastern Front. Because what he would usually do is that a certain unit, be it a brigade or an army or division that was taking heavy casualties and would be rendered combat ineffective, he would remove that unit and replace it directly with a unit from another.
So let's pause for a
theater.
second because
That so those
there might be a
people.
lot of, oh, just one sec, because I think it's really important for people to be able to visualize a couple of the points you're making who may not be familiar with terminology or how these things unfold. What you're talking about with the concern within Hitler's and possibly the rest, but Hitler's, hierarchy of commanders and whatnot was not, when you mentioned the rate, the speed with which he was plowing through this territory was causing their lines of supply, for example, or reinforcements for them to be able to hold that territory was very thin. So there wasn't, security to back it up when they made these advances necessarily. It was difficult logistically to ensure that those advances didn't go backwards. And then you have the high rates of casualty that you mentioned being refilled more or less from outside sources. So from more than one angle, we can say unsustainable, but we need to take into consideration that it's kind of two areas that are really sticking out from a manpower and from a supply. Now, that supply could be food, it could be ammunition, it could be a number of things. But you were in a vulnerable position, and these commanders were expressing concern about this. Okay, please continue.
Yes, so and those commanders who voiced that concern and those people of high ranks who voiced their um, opinions, most of them did not end up doing too well. Let's put it this way.
Are you implying they did
he
not
did not
survive,
like that
Ivan?
criticism. Some of them, most of them. Basically,
but it was risky
when
to express something against the decisions
absolutely
that were being made. Okay.
and so they did not do well for themselves. The result of that kind of advance and replacing the injured and broken units with fresh units ended up defeat in the Battle of Stalingrad, where the entire Sixth Army was surrounded and either frozen to death or taken into captivity. And that was not a nice POW camp of what Ukrainians, for example, are providing to Russians nowadays. They most of them froze to death and died of exhaustion and starvation. And ultimately, what happened to Mr. Hitler is that he unalived himself in the bunker, because that was one of the pivoting points of the World War II and the war on the Eastern Front. And from there on, the Soviet forces, with tremendous support of the Allies, especially America, they pushed Hitler's army and military back all the way through Russian territory, back into the Eastern Europe, and all the way to Berlin. Okay, so that kind of commitment to an unsustainable goal in unsustainable ways costed that person a lot.
But it was a plan.
Instantly. It took a little while.
It was a plan that was chosen. It had been marked out. You're referring to the term goal, but it was a plan. And there were people who were concerned about the plan, who had consequences for it. And then there were other people watching what happened to the dissenters. And they probably modified whether or not they'd say something because they didn't want to disappear or be in charge of the outhouse or whatever. So how does this relate as real world combat to, let's say, football or the game?
Well, with regards to football and Wrexham Football Club in particular, a few months back, I have heard that there was an interview and the video recorded about Wrexham, the team, the management staff, and in the end, it was never published because it was not positive enough. So I have heard from reliable sources, and when I heard that they were prohibiting not positive enough interviews and videos about the club from airing, that kind of completed my line of comparison with what I have just told you guys. Because
and it explains
when
to me,
when
you used the word censorship before, I wasn't necessarily aware of kind of this classic example where some folks, like myself included, might have felt censorship was too strong of a word. But in this scenario you're talking about, it could be seen as very relevant.
Unfortunately, pretty much every single mistake that was made by German command and Hitler himself moving into Russian territory on their race to their final goal, I can see that being made within what the Wrexham club is doing now. We can see the replacement of the players. So just the recent example of bringing 2 strikers in, replacing the old ones. We can see the unsustainable race towards record-breaking achievements. We can see the lack of infrastructure and lack of logistical supply behind the main team, behind the main effort. Even though the quality of the players that we get in this league right now, we're either second biggest budget or third biggest budget. So the quality of the players is amazing. Same as.
But an example of infrastructure behind could be like, we don't have the COP up and running, we don't have the academy up and running, training grounds, etc. Are other examples of readiness.
We do not develop players fast enough within the squad. I'm not even talking about the youth. I'm talking about the players of the first squad to progress through the leagues. We overplay the players that are bringing success, and we pretty much run them into the ground. They all get injured, or injured, broken. Or they just burn out because they're all playing in the psyched state all the time. And instead of continue rotating players and giving people sort of 50-50 playing game time, because we had replacement because of subs for every position. Refreshing, yes. We run a certain player into the ground, and only then we replace them when we have to.
Okay.
That's why like those comparisons kind of added up in my head, and unfortunately there is no good way out of this. Like when you take that kind of a pathway, it's a one-way ticket.
Right. Well, especially the way you've illustrated it. And I would like to just take a moment to emphasize to folks who might skip over or are just tuning in, we are not saying that Wrexham Football Club is the Third Reich. We are not saying that at all. What Ivan is illustrating, I know, but I'm going to be the one to officially put it out there. You know, this is a style of leadership. It is when we talk about culture and what we think is happening in the club, from the locker room to decision-making, how inclusive it perhaps is, versus a top-down, more obedience or encouraged compliance system. We're talking about styles of managing groups of people with goals or plans in mind. And that's really right now pretty relevant, but obviously Ivan, with his military background, has a reference point in a battle sense that a lot of Americans, if not specifically the incident, are familiar with some of the names and players. So kind of like X's and O's on a football field, the X's and O's on a battlefield is something that a lot of folks could visualize, and from a movement and a need standpoint, draw some comparisons. It is not to assign stigma to Wrexham. We're talking about styles that, or entities that our viewers might be familiar with, in order to be able to more quickly see those connections. And that it's not just football, it's not just combat. There are aspects where these are universal truths for life and problems that an organization can run into in pursuing its goals, because there are risks and reward in initiating any kind of change. So thank you. Please continue.
No, it's pretty much exactly what I was talking about. Very good way to sum it all up.
I was just translating and making sure.
The example that I gave is not the only one in the world. There is hundreds of them throughout the history of warfare. It happened from ancient times.
My first thought was not the same, but Napoleon. I mean, like, we didn't learn when it went badly last time, right? From a decision-making standpoint. But yes, countless examples of the principle.
It literally happened as recent as it recently happened in the invasion of Ukraine, when Russia went in and went too deep into the territory, spreading their effort too far, and Ukrainians managed to take advantage of that. So it's just that's what I mean. There is a certain pattern. There is a certain general principle that you have to see, and I'm trying to really stay away from the word problem, because problem is subjective. We're talking about objective stuff.
Like
the phenomenon that we observe here time and time again is a phenomenon is that people are oblivious to it. So people are not willing to pay attention to that because they cover it with their success. In human psyche, that happens time and time again. Doesn't matter the education of a person, doesn't matter the position of a person, doesn't matter the activity. If something brings you success, that even though you can understand that this is not sustainable and it's not quite the way it's supposed to be, people always find the excuse to saying, well, it's better than not winning. It's better than losing.
Yeah.
It's better we'll figure it out later, as long as we keep on going up, because it's better than because it's better than going down.
Okay.
And that's a culprit of pretty much everybody and everything.
Okay.
And I can safely say right now that the way the club is developing, the way the team is playing, is not only unsustainable, but extremely dangerous when it comes to a change of change of leadership when that happens.
Okay.
Because the only way, like, if the team gets promoted to championship this year, so be it. Even though, in my personal opinion, it's probably the worst thing that can happen to this team this year. And if all of a sudden we have even more money to spend on, and we just buy a whole bunch of amazing players level above, that still does not solve the core issue. And if anything, it worsens the position and it deteriorates the future of the club, because carrying on playing through the problems by replacing weaker players with stronger players will only emphasize the lack of system, lack of structure, lack of planning, lack of logistical support, lack of team cohesion in the end. And the faster the downfall will be. Because even when the stronger your players that you bring in to replace the weaker ones become, the more independent they become in their thinking, the more potential for conflict arises. Because with stronger players inevitably comes stronger personalities. And when they realize the limits of the coaching staff when it comes to actually coaching and providing tactical and strategical education, when team stops getting results, when it will happen sooner or later, it's inevitable. New coach who's going to come in will not be able to fix that issue anymore.
Okay.
And that's why famous scene from which is true, the movie the Untergang, the Downfall, which depicts the last days of Hitler's command and himself in the bunker. Mm-hmm. He says the line that I should have executed every single general, colonel, and high commanding officer like Stalin did.
Oh God!
Because he said that what happens is that he realizes that people start plotting
from dissent
in their leader.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a couple of points.
Yeah.
Do you want to finish talking about assassination of dissenters, or are we good on that one? Okay. Because from a standpoint of it being effective, you remove the competition, you remove the conflict for your vision and make it more unified by being rid of dissenters for decision making. That's the place he was coming from, is by not being more absolute from the beginning. I now have this problem that I, as a evil person, regret. So I want to go back a couple of steps, because I think there are a couple interesting things that you said. I thought that the aspect of human psyche, not from a conspiracy standpoint of, everyone's trying to consciously cover up the difference between, let's say, poor performance and winning, being attributed to success, but even from a supporter's standpoint, how our minds in what we desire, back to what we said in episode 1, or what are you looking to get out of your relationship with the football club? If you want it to be that they win and progress, and that's what excites you, great. If it's that you want it to be a healthy club, from the sense of being able to sustain a level of play for an indefinite period of time, that's something different. But the idea that from human nature, not just to take credit for shit that's lucky, as all of us in the workplace have seen people do, happy accidents suddenly become intention. Yes, we planned that. That's why that happened. Can also be not just managerial, but in those of us deciding, how do we feel as we approach the precipice of whether or not we ascend to the championship this season, or we stay and consolidate? Because that discussion was happening last season. It's still relevant now. And things like training grounds, academy, communications, all kinds of factors are involved in what would be the health of the club. And I like the universality of the idea that human psyche, maybe we're not even aware of it. So obviously there are times when it's intentional and you put forward the best message, but maybe some of us aren't aware of why we feel some of the feelings we do surrounding these issues with Wrexham. Um, I know I had another one, but I lost it probably because I spoke so long on that. But I think you did a great job of from where we started with a submitted question from Deandra, who is well versed in football, certainly much more than myself, and has a show on the Red Horde. I don't know if we've mentioned it before, where she does watch alongs of the women's match. There's a women's match tomorrow at home at the Rock against Swansea. So anybody who would be interested in catching that, I'm not sure that it's on iFollow. I think it might be on S4C. But there should be information about that on the club website. Do you think you have time for a question that I have that I'd like to submit for
Yeah,
answering?
sure.
Okay. The one I thought of
Sure,
was
absolutely, yeah.
from a dietary perspective. We've heard a little bit about how the food improved at the club after Rob and Ryan took over, just like the gym and some other facilities. As a fitness guy, but also someone who has been a footballer, are there types of foods that science show are more beneficial for footballers to ingest? Is it individualized based on each player or their position? What what are footballers eating that are different than, the average person? Or is it the same and they just eat like mountains of it to keep their calories up?
Um, it is a very good question. I know I'm not a dietitian.
Oh, that's
I
fine.
did
I
work
just
in the fitness industry,
casually, you're a
and
layperson with
yes,
some experience and insight.
yeah. The Again, very cliche answer. It is all personal to a certain extent. People do have their
Okay.
favorite foods, and everybody's digestive system is different. Some people prefer to play on an empty stomach.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Some people prefer to eat the morning before the game. Some people prefer to eat a lot of carbs. Some people stay away from carbs and rely more on a high protein diet, especially on the game day and in the preparation for a series of games. But
Okay.
the main thing is, from my experience, is that um, very little processed food. So real food is number one. It doesn't matter whether you like rice, pasta, or you enjoy buckwheat or any couscous. Like any kind of source of from carbs as long as there is not too much sugar and processed food in that diet. Your club will take care through the club's professional. They will take care of the numbers of calories you need to consume. So you will know approximately where you're sitting. Your weight is continuously monitored. But at the end of the day, is whatever makes you feel. Through the years, you understand what foods make you feel and play the best, and you just
Okay.
religiously stick to those foods, because the last thing you want is to risk and break that routine and have any kind of problem on the game day. So I
Okay.
myself, I always enjoyed rice based meals. So rice gave me a good amount of energy without feeling heavy or bloated. If we would be playing earlier in the day, I prefer to eat only a couple of bananas and maybe like a spoon of peanut butter. Just keep it very, very simple and keep my stomach as empty as possible. Just staying hydrated. If it's a later
Okay.
in the day game, then I will have a proper breakfast with eggs, with good quality bread, real butter. So just load up on your perfect combination of fats, carbs, and proteins, and obviously consume your protein shakes, your protein bars, whatever you need to keep your protein intake up. Especially if you're younger, you struggle to keep your weight. You actually, because you run all the time,
Yeah.
effectively you're losing weight. All the time. So for the majority of the food, actually maintain your weight because you're dropping your weight all the time. because you just run so much. And you're not on steroids, you're not on any kind of anabolic supplements. Like in some other sports, for example, when I played hockey, you see a lot of the guys who just openly using performance enhancing drugs, and that's a completely different beast because that your body you become a mutant effectively. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about natural athletes, it's that perfect balance of good, real, clean food, the amount of it, and the time of the day you consume it before the game. So hope that answers your question.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. No, as someone who hasn't been in high level sport in any kind of way as a participant, it certainly sounds to me a bit like maybe besides healthier, natural, whole foods, you're looking for ones that will provide slow burning energy release throughout an extended period of time rather than spikes and perhaps dips that you could get with things like sugars. I wouldn't have thought about Max Kluwerth being a great example. And we've seen him bulk up over the past couple of seasons. I mean, he's still pretty lean, but if he's trying to bring on mass, gains, and he's out there with all this cardio as part of his sport, what the struggle could be to try and achieve those goals while doing so much cardio. So no, that was really insightful. Thank you. And the idea that it's not universal, which should be obvious, I guess, to a lot of people, but as someone, again, who is so ignorant of maybe professional level, or maybe just how it's changed from when I played in school and what we were taught as just kind of general rules that we were to follow from our coach about our diets at home or when we were at school to deliver X result, or to even maybe get us just thinking about food and how it is fuel and the quality of fuel. You're not going to load up a jet with diesel, right? If you want a high performance machine, you have to have high performance fuel. So no, that was very insightful. Thank you, Ivan. Are you ready to talk about
no problem
your 10 minutes of watching?
Yes. So the game.
Let me find my bookmark here. I have so many notes and so many matches I've watched now. Okay, let me see. So was it Bolton for the Virtue Trophy?
Yes. So
to review for folks, that would have been Tuesday, February 11th at Wrexham at the Kairos, the men's team against Bolton in the Virtue Trophy round. And you were going to watch minutes 51 through 60 per our drawing.
Yes, I have watched those minutes.
And the end result of the match was Wrexham 1, Bolton 0, with 4 added minutes at the end. So what are your thoughts on how those minutes reflect in the result?
In a nutshell, what I have seen is two relatively equal teams. I would say equally poopy teams that did not look good. The parts of that stretch, it seems like teams were a little bit lazy, and obviously that cup is important, but you can tell that people are quite reluctant to put in that extra bit of effort. Quality of passing from both sides was really poor. The basic positioning when I was looking at Wrexham, a lot of players were not orientated to the ball, like basic mistakes in the setup, random chaotic orientation to the ball at times, poor quality of passing, being poorly timed passing to the wrong foot, taking too long to decide what to do. And that's, unfortunately, that's been a trademark of Wrexham over the years, is that because, as Parkinson said himself, we play what we see. When you play what you see, you take too long on the ball to make a quick decision, that quick, acute, dangerous pass. People take too long on the ball, just that 2 seconds too long. Reliance on those long balls going somewhere into a general direction. That was happening from both sides. I have seen Wrexham try to recycle the ball once or twice. They went up to the right hand side, trying to develop the attack there. They stopped because again players were quite static, not really offering too many options for short to medium pass. The winger turns around, passes the ball back slowly. The ball will go. The pass was a bit too slow, to the wrong foot. The player receives the ball, looks around for a second too long, passes the ball further into defense. The ball lazily worked back to the left. They go up to the left, again, pretty much coming to the same point of advancement up the pitch. They all freeze for a split second. They look around and they see no options whatsoever because obviously they're coming up with it on the go. There is no deliberate plan. There is no step ahead kind of a tactical planning. They pass the ball back again, back to the defender, center back, and he just boots the ball on. So you can tell that they tried to recycle the ball once or twice. It led to nowhere. And instead of doing it again, but faster and maybe with a bit more deliberate planning and trying to get players into a angled off positions, because basically that concept of breathing ball over team is broken. The proportional distance between players is not there. They are just the way they set up is not designed for a possession short or medium build-up play. The gap between the defense and the midfield is so large that even the defender is trying to play a shorter, sort of smarter way of a build-up type of a football. They are just positioned for a long ball straight away. Like you can tell that some of the times defenders such as Scar or Brandt or O'Connell in other games, they receive the ball and they do want to, you can tell they do want to play something more of a short, sure pass, trying to build from the back, but they look and they see that there is such a huge gap between the defense and the next line. There's like, okay, they are already waiting for a long ball. They already wait, so there's no point because there's no support coming in. There's no shape set up here. They just wait for a long ball. And to be honest, it worked for Wrexham even better because quite often what I can see is, and it was happening in this game, they go for that risky pass forward. They're almost willing to give that ball away and try to pressure in the center, forcing a turnover. And that's what I have seen within those 10 minutes. So
okay.
Judging from those 10 minutes, the game should have been 0-0. But as we often rely on the moment of brilliance because we time, Andy Cannon scored a good goal, and it was just another lucky outcome. So yeah, people are happy and they think that's the way to. Yeah.
I don't know that everyone's happy, but I think there are a lot of interesting things that you've said that I'm able to see, and maybe, since you have the vocabulary for it, it puts words to some of the things I observed. So, for example, not just in the 10-minute slot that you watch, but I think it's interesting chance that 10-minute segment was just before the subs came on and just before, the 4 subs came on, and Andy had his goal a little bit later. So we had major players like Lee, Ollie Rathbone, Barney, Longman, Rodriguez, Fall. We had a turnover that was significant at about the 60-minute mark. And certainly has had discussion of those fresh legs being a little dynamic and changing what really was a neck and neck, even to myself, a more inexperienced observer. I like what you said about being static, because that's a great word for what I saw of essentially an equal intermingling, like spaced on the screen. They all seem to be equidistant from each other, both teams, like sprinkles on a cake. And then that cake would move in mass, maintaining those distances, more or less, from one end of the pitch to the other, which was weird in how I observed it, because more commonly, I see a more flock of bird movement where you have waves, you have arcs, where one side, there's more movement, as opposed to kind of like Pong, the old video game, from one side to the other. So struggling with choices. If everybody's equidistant. I could see how that would cause you to take more time to make a decision. I think there's also, if you're not going in with a plan or training, you don't rise to an occasion is a phrase I was taught. You don't rise to the occasion, you revert to your level of training. But I also think that an additional factor is these are not our first team. You know, the amount of time the players on the pitch have spent together to work together and be familiarized with each other's play should also be a factor. So I think there are a lot of things that
Jesse,
contributed.
sorry, before I forget, so that matter of first team or second team, that should not really matter. The patterns should be there. The execution of those patterns might be on a different level, different speed, but there is no difference between what I have seen today and what I in the game against Bolton. The concept, the patterns, the lack of is completely the same. Absolutely. This little fly is just killing me. Yeah, so yeah, anyway, so
okay,
yeah, the die, you little bugger.
For anyone that is what is it? Is it entomologist? Anyone who is sympathetic to bugs, we apologize.
We apologize. It was just literally in my face, one of those little tiny flies.
Couldn't see it, but I believe you. Okay, so we've had some analysis of the 10 minutes that you watched with Bolton. Again, I'm going to catch the later game, and we can do the drawing for whichever future game. Oh, please, go ahead.
Can I say a little bit about the game that was played today?
Sure, go ahead.
Again, I'm not talking about winning or losing. The thing is with winning or losing or scoring the goals, look at those goals and ask yourself, can the circumstances that the goal was scored from be replicated with at least 50% or more probability game to game?
Okay.
And the answer is no, it cannot be. Both of the goals were scored out of nothing. That means that there was no conscious effort apart from sending a long ball to create that situation. So there was no setup, no build-up. It cannot be replicated. Not even, I'm not talking, you cannot replicate it like 100%, but the concept, the pattern that led there should be replicable. That's the definition of a successful team, stable team. That's why Wrexham is so unstable, is because it's moments of brilliance.
I think
luck.
when I
It's
hear you
effectively luck
that,
because we have good players.
Yes.
But the game itself.
Oh, please. Mm-hmm.
The game itself was definition of pinball. I watched the game. I watched different slots, beginning, middle of the game, and then the end. It was literally head tennis. The ball was just from both sides. So it's chaos. It's effectively chaos. It's a very, and anything can happen. On another day, Northampton we played. Yeah.
Yes.
No. Yeah, they could have won. So that's the problem with wins like that. It's the title of the show is it's winning wrong. The winning these kind of games. Look, guys, it's okay to do that every now and then. It's okay to play like that every now and then. It happens, but not every freaking time.
What I hear from what you were sharing are a couple interesting points. What I hear when you talk about it not being something that we can replicate, I hear a lack of control of the circumstances, that we do not have control over creating repeatable scenarios for us to score. And that is a choice, it sounds like. You can choose that you're going to create not just opportunities out of what you find, but you will, with intention, structure plans or methods to create opportunity with your team. So to me, I don't know why, but control over your own destiny, really, not just the pitch or your players, but choosing to create your own luck as opposed to relying upon chance to deliver it to you. And then when you said ping pong, that's the word to be is reactionary. You are responding to it coming to you rather than
We
having
do
intention?
across my time watching Wrexham, we do very little. We do very little preemptive work. We do a lot of reactive work, and that happens through all the leagues so far that I've seen. So we're reacting all the time to every episode. We're not preempting. We don't have that in a chess or a boxing like mentality. You're not one step ahead.
Gotcha.
You are either equal or you actually a step behind and you just reacting. Because it's okay to play a defensive style of football, but defending with just number of legs behind the ball and holding what's called holding a shape is one thing. But the definition of a good defensive team is not defending itself, it's the transition. Because just sitting there and absorbing damage without actively, you need to get to the point when you're already setting up the attack while you're defending. So you're defending in such a way that when you get a chance to disrupt the play, disrupt the passing lane, you create your what's called the PSD pressure support depth combinations of triangle, usually four players in there. When you're creating and you shaping and you forming your opposition in a certain way, you're already doing it with the next thought in mind. We're going to create our counter attack. That just doesn't happen with Wrexham. We get the ball boot, like literally straight away, because it's that next level. And the patterns, that's what's important. Whether you're playing the team that plays last or first, your patterns should be adjustable and workable no matter what kind of level of opposition you play. You create a certain adjustments. You overload a certain area of the field. You decide that you're going to be either playing a bit more compact, for example, or you will have that little bit of extra space because you know that you can exploit a certain player, you can exploit a certain. Football is a game of spaces. If you can control a certain space and you know that is your strength in this part of the pitch, you need to adjust. That's why when people talk about playing, like, it's not about playing sexy football. Yes, it's a buzzword. People call it sexy football. But what playing sexy football means is being able to adjust, to change, to not to react, but to preempt, because you possess so many different abilities. Maybe how to move the ball and the players around, and that's why it looks sexy. Because sorry.
No, you're okay. I mean, we are well over an hour, and we should probably move on to something else because we know it could go on this forever. But what I would like you to maybe consider, this seems like a good topic for maybe another episode for you to talk about an OODA loop. So
paralysis by analysis.
Fair points. All right, folks. Well, I think it's time to play Everything is Football. You ready for some Everything is Football, Ivan? Okay, if anybody is a new viewer and didn't catch our debut episode, please go back and take a look at it, because you don't want to miss this very fun game I invented where I present Ivan with miscellaneous items, usually unrelated to football. And Ivan, on the spot, has to tell me how this object is somehow tied into football. There are not restrictions on how he makes that connection, but based on the last episode, it can be very informative. So we're going to start this week. Our first item being nail polish. For those who cannot see, it is a pink bottle of nail polish.
I know for a fact that some of the players actually apply nail polish to a nail or two on their toes.
Really?
For good luck.
No kidding.
Usually wives or girlfriends would do that, and
That's really sweet.
It's one of those little things, like, or I knew a guy who was a striker, and his little sister would apply the nail polish to one of his nails on his toes. Yeah, for good luck.
That is super sweet. Yeah, no, I think maybe even having it with you as a good luck token. You're changing your boots, you're putting your socks on and stuff before a match or something, that you have a little visual reminder of someone's affection for you, and they're, cheering you on even if they're not present. That is so sweet. I would not have expected that. Okay. we have another item here that you might have to do a little bit of explanation about. Let me see. Hopefully you'll recognize it and be able to tell me its name. So I have here a red necklace, folks, with many, many beads on it. It is usually attributed as being a part of some traditional costumes. So when we think about historic dress that different countries have to symbolize their history. So for example, in Wales, one of the symbols amongst the women's attire would be these really tall black hats. I think from the Victorian age. This is a beaded red necklace. Again, there are different versions of it, but it is considered to be symbolic of Ukrainian culture. Do you have a name for this necklace, Ivan?
Buсы.
Okay. And you could maybe speak a little bit about what it might represent or just when it would be appropriate to wear, but then you need to tell me how it relates to football.
It's that kind of necklace is quite standard for sort of Eastern European area. It's
Okay.
originally it came from it's more of like a wedding ceremony. So
Oh.
basic, very popular decoration for a bride,
Okay.
and would usually it would usually be part of what was that?
Dowry?
No, it's in old tradition when the family of the bride has to provide a certain amount of valuable goods to the family of the groom, and that would
we
be
usually call that
I forgot the actual term for that.
It's not just money, and there might be another word for that, but the concept being kind of the same.
Dowry. Yeah. So, but it reminded me of when you put it on, because it doesn't look quite like Ukrainian or Polish or anything like that.
Yeah, it's not wound properly.
It's the World Cup in South Africa, because there was a lot of African tribes when they would be, before almost every game where African nations would be playing, they would have their traditional decorations and outfits, and there would be like teams of ladies on the field singing. So yeah, that kind of reminded me of the World Cup.
Oh, that's fantastic! Wow, no,
I mean, 2010.
Not having really followed World Cups or anything like that, those are cultural moments that I would have missed, but now I'll know to keep my eyes open for. Okay, well, are you ready for the second and last item? I think I forgot to describe that this necklace is red with multiple beads on it. I don't know if I said the color. I'm going to get better, folks. All right, item number 3. A kettle. I don't know how well you can see that. An electric kettle. Oh. How is this football?
That is football because of the origin of the game football coming from England.
Okay.
And there is not too many things more traditionally England than a cup of tea. So in my head, football and tea is pretty much on the same shelf.
Okay. Fair enough. Though we will note that tea did not originate in England, but yes, it is certain that after.
No, but the black tea did. Not green tea, black tea.
Okay, well, that was Everything is Football for today, folks. That was enjoyable and, as I expected, insightful. Are you ready to do the drawing for the next 10-minute segment for the next match?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I haven't thought of a cool name. Barbara brought up the point that when I referred to it last episode as my 10-minute idea, I didn't have a catchy name for it. It was just the 10-minute idea. So maybe I'll come up with something better. But we're back with our little tin pot, our little slots of paper. For those of you who didn't listen to the last episode, because Ivan struggles to ingest an entire 90 minutes of Wrexham football, given his aversion to the style of play, I have suggested to him that he watch 10-minute bites of it. Given that he feels it doesn't really make a difference watching one match to the next, or maybe 1 minute to the next, that his expectations of what he will see and what will be produced will be consistent given his now a few years of observation and analysis of the team. It's an interesting experiment for him to watch a finite portion of a match and then connect it to what the end result of the match is. So last week it was minutes 51 to 60. We will not be replacing that segment of time into the pot until the pot has been exhausted. So now I'm going to pull another segment out. For those who don't know, if he gets a segment that covers halftime or full time and there are added minutes, he has to watch the added minutes in addition to the segment of time. So there might be a day where he watches more than 10. But for today, I have drawn minutes 71 to 80. So Ivan will watch in one of the upcoming matches, minutes 71 to 80, and then we will discuss what he observed, like we did today, and how it relates to the end of that match. So we're probably in a good spot to wrap some stuff up. You have anything that you'd like to say or add today before we say goodbye to the people?
I have a lot to say and to add, but we'll do it next time.
Sure,
next time.
Right?
There is so many more things we can talk about.
Yeah. So true. And we might have additional segments that we slot in, but we're still finding our legs, and we're appreciative of all the people who watched episode 1. Hopefully some will watch. Oh, go ahead. What?
Please, guys, when you watch this, and girls, thank you so much for like 70 something views, and only about 30 of them are from Ruby. But please, please submit your questions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, challenge me with some good, interesting questions. That doesn't have to be about football necessarily. If you can connect it to football, so that those lines of thought, do that. Please do.
And we might have, as a side note, a social media avenue that might make it easier for folks to submit questions rather than coming into YouTube. But in the meantime, please put them in the comments. We're interested to hear your perspectives. I know some folks had some questions from watching the content of episode 1. So thank you again, those of you who have joined us for a second time or have joined us for the first time. We're still growing here at iWords and Upwards. Oh, we were supposed to get in a little more about the name of the show. This is what happens when I don't put the notes down like super clearly. So yes, next time I will put that on the notes for us to address.
That's okay.
Thank you everyone for participating, and we'll see you next time. iWords and Upwards.
Indeed. See you next time, ladies and gents. Thank you so much.